Hello, I'm Lisa Burkhart Worley of Pearls of Promise Ministries, and welcome to Pop Talk, the show where you never know what subjects might pop up. It's not easy when our parents age and we end up having to take care of our parents. But today we have a very knowledgeable guest who is going to be talking about how to parent our parents in a loving way. We're going to introduce her in a minute, but first I want to introduce my Pop Talk co-host. To my immediate right is Dr. Lynette Sim.
Hello.
And we were just commenting, she always has the cutest shoes every time. I mean, they're always different. I wear the same things, just don't look at my feet. And then Rosemary LeGrand on my far right. It's good to see you guys. Always.
Hello,
Good to see
everyone.
you. Yeah. So it is my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Her name's Charlotte Canion. Yeah, Charlotte is a businesswoman who, after her retirement as an event planner for a large corporation, decided to start a business. Now, we're not going to be talking about this today, but I just have to tell you what her business was. It's called basketjacket.com, and it features an invention that she came up with, insulated and colorful jacket covers for plants. And then when I read this, I was thinking, where were these? Why didn't I have them during the hard freeze that Texas experienced when I lost all my plants? It would have been nice to have a big jacket for that big bush in the back. Charlotte is also an award-winning master gardener. But the reason why she is here today is because of her award-winning book. It's called You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. So if you have a parent who is struggling with dementia or any other debilitating disease, today Charlotte is going to give us some advice on how to care for those parents. So it's great to have you on Pop Talk. We sat together, we called it a divine appointment at one of our mutual meetings that we go to. And you know, I thought it was a very good topic because so many of us deal with this. I know both my parents died pretty young and it was quick. But my husband's father suffered from Alzheimer's, and so we dealt with that. He lived into the early 80s, and then my grandmother lived to the ripe old age of 97.
Wow.
And she definitely had dementia, and so we'll talk about that in a minute. So I can relate to what you're going to be speaking about, and it's personal for you, and that's one of the reasons why you wrote this book, because you had family members that dealt with several things: dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's. And you were really close to your mom who struggled. And so can you talk about how difficult it was, especially when your mom started to slip?
My mom was my mentor. She was the one that taught me about God. She gave me my moral set. My dad traveled a lot, and he was a Marine, and those of your audience that have military family members know what that's like. It's strict and rigid and very, but he traveled a lot. So my mom was my best friend. She was, we traveled together. She, not only did she mother me and teach me everything and how to walk and how to treat people, her philosophy in life was treat people the way you want to be treated. And I try to carry that, on from day to day. But some of the first things that I noticed about my mom was the forgetfulness. Well, we all forget. We walk into another room and forget what we're here after. But I'm going to tell you a quick little test that you can do with your parents. And it's not just parents. There are many, many spouses today that their husbands are walking that journey. Yeah. Or it's a family member they've taken into their home. So it's in every family. It could be an aunt, it could be a spouse, it could be your parents. It just so happened it was 3 parents at the same time. And I have to share this with you. After they'd all passed, and my journey was a 16-year journey. After they'd all passed, within 6 weeks, God spoke to me the way we and I are speaking, and he said, Charlotte, I need you to write your book. And I went, God, I did not do well in English. Mm-hmm. He says, that's all right. They've got editors, but you've got some stories that people need to hear. And I got an email. And I go, God, you do not send emails, inviting me to a writer's seminar. Within 11 months, the book is in my hand. And then I'm thinking, who's wanting to read my story? The next year it was voted the best self-help book in the state of Texas.
That's right. Wow.
And I'm a retired senior, and I never, dreamed all of this. But anyway, back to the journey, with my mom. she would forget things. But let me give you a little test. If you think someone,
Flunk.
well, if you think someone is kind of starting down the dementia road, and let me give you a fact. Dementia is just the umbrella that covers 240 some odd senior diseases. Alzheimer's falls under it, dementia falls under it, you know, frontal lobe, you name it, it all falls under dementia. So when the doctor says dementia, he really hasn't pinpointed what it is. It's just that big umbrella. But as, you know, as I'm going through this journey, I'm trying to find all the tools I can. And I found this little test that you can do. And you name 5 things, simple: a door, a house, a flower, a tree, a chair. And you'll say, Mom, tell me those words back. If they can tell you 4 of the 5, they're still in pretty good shape. But if they can't get past the first 2, then that's where their problem comes in, because it's your short-term memory that goes.
Are you all doing what I'm doing? Trying to remember?
Yeah, I think I got 4. I'm good. I'm good. You're good.
Yeah.
But your short-term memory is the first thing to go.
Yeah.
And the first person to know that they're going down this proverbial rabbit hole, as I call it, is themselves.
Yeah.
So they fake it. If everyone laughs in the room, they're going to laugh. If everyone's somber, they're going to be somber. They fake that they're understanding what's going on.
Wow. Yeah.
The second people that are in denial are the kids, are the closest ones. Well, my husband's an only child. His dad lived with us. I knew it for a while, but he wouldn't listen to me.
Yeah.
And I was going to share a story with you about really what triggered getting my father-in-law to the doctor and get it diagnosed so that my husband would face it. He came into the house one day, and he was the most wonderful man in the world. It was like having my own butler, you know. He would vacuum the house. He would do the dishes. He'd just push me. I could cook dinner, but, you know, he would do everything. The doorbell would ring. He'd run into the door. And if my husband would get angry with me, he was on my side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was a wonderful, wonderful man.
Perfect.
But he would run errands to the store. And one day I'm cooking dinner after work, and he comes in and he says, "Oh my gosh, Charlotte, I need your help." And I said, "Pop, what happened?" He said, "I was in a wreck." So I immediately, you know, turned off the oven. I said, "Pop, what happened? Did anybody get hurt?" And he says, "No, but I need you to go with me." So, you know, we went out, and as we're going out, you remember that generation, you know, the greatest generation, they drove those big old cars.
Right.
So he had a Lincoln. That Lincoln was mangled down one whole side of it. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how he drove it home. And then my mind is running through, did he leave the scene of a wreck? Was anyone hurt? Are the cops going to show up in any minute? You know, what? And I said, "Pop, what did you hit?" He said, "I hit a mailbox."
Mm.
Now, my mind is thinking that had to be the biggest brick concrete mailbox in the world to have done that damage. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm going, it wasn't a mailbox. But one of the things I learned was you have to love your parents in spite of everything, and you have to respect them. So what I did was, he wanted to go back and pay the lady for the mailbox. So we drive around the neighborhood. We drive around the neighborhood next to it. We drive around. He can't find where this wreck happened. But finally, I said, "Pop, you know, we'd been driving for 30 minutes. He hadn't been gone that long. We found a mailbox that was just leaning, a whole mailbox leaning." Now, I know that's not what caused the wreck, but I didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. Pop says, I want to go up to the door and pay for the mailbox. And I said, "God, this is your hands." Because, you know, I just trust God to handle this, handle everything. So we drive up the driveway. He gets out, and we were on they own 2 acres. So we literally had to go down a long driveway. He says, "You stay in the car, Charlotte. I want to go up to the door by myself." So I'm keeping an eye, you know, on Pop. And I was trying to, you know, see, I couldn't even see the front door because the shrubs were all the way to the ceiling of the house. Anyway, Pop stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Now, I told you Pop was a very, very gentleman. He was a good man. But he did have his edge. And as I watched his demeanor, he started talking, and I couldn't see he was talking to anyone. Because like I said, couldn't see behind the shrubs. So I'm thinking, okay, that he's talking to someone on the porch. But all of a sudden, his fist start clenching. I think, okay, it's time to get out of the car, go help. And as I walked up, I grabbed Pop's hand, and I could see out of my peripheral what was going on. So I walked him up the steps, and I walked him over to a bench. And on that bench was a scarecrow. It was October. Not only was Pop had a rat, he couldn't see. He shouldn't be driving. So when I shared this story, with my husband, he finally, I guess we better take him to the doctor.
Yeah.
And the doctor's first thing was, you've got to take the car keys away.
Right. Right.
So Charlotte, your parents, they were, even though they were declining, they really wanted to stay in their home, but there were some changes that was supposed to be made, or changes that you were going to make. Can I quick ask you, how can you speak about that scenario and provide some advice for children of aging parents who are in transitions?
Well, the transition, like I say, my parents did not want to leave the
Yeah.
house. And my mama followed my dad's lead. I mean, she would have moved up close to me, and I tried and tried and tried to get them to move up close. They were not going to leave their house. My dad was a Marine, as I've already mentioned before. I'm going to share a story with you, and the reason I think that your listeners would enjoy this story or get something from it is sometimes you have to do things that you wouldn't normally do. And so I call it my covert nursing action. And the reason I call it that is because I had to set up a schedule with a nurse to go into my mother's house, because my aunt had been my caregiver, my eyes and ears on my parents while they lived, like an hour and 45 minutes from me. She would call me and tell me and things going on. Well, one day she called me at work, and I had to leave work, and she says, Charlotte, your mother has a rash from her knee down to her toes, and it looks like impetigo. Your dad won't let me take her to the doctor. So I schedule within 48 hours, my husband and I take off from work and we go down there. I had made an arrangement with a nurse to meet us 15 minutes from my mother's house. And she got in our car because my dad didn't like strangers in the house. So the covert action was my husband was to take my dad out to the backyard. I unlocked the front door and let the nurse in. I took my mom into the bedroom and the nurse. Oh, my mom was elated. She's a very social person. To have company in the house, she was just very excited. And then we'd come middle of the week, it was all exciting. And with the Alzheimer's, with her and her Alzheimer's, I said, Mom, she's here to look at the rash on your leg. Now, my mom had been clawing her legs. I could tell that they were bothering her. And she says, what rash? She couldn't remember that she'd been scratching her. Yeah, scratching her legs. Anyway, the nurse rolled up, Mom's pants leg, and she said, oh my gosh, this looks like impetigo. She probably needs to go to the doctor. And I said, can you just do what you can? I will address that. In other words, what I'm telling kids is you've got to use your better judgment and keep things as calm as you can. Keep things simple. So anyway, the nurse, rubbed salve and debrided and just, did everything she could. And then she wrapped it up. And I swear it looked like a war wound by the time she had finished wrapping my mother's leg. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm knelt down by my mom and holding her hand. And she's just chitter-chatting to both of us and just having the great old time. Anyway, I'm thinking, I'm going to get this nurse back out the front door before my daddy knows. No, that wasn't going to happen. It was about that moment. My dad is 6'3". I'm 5 foot. He walks in the door still, and he's just standing there. My husband's behind him going, he did the best he could. My dad says, what's going on here, and who is that woman in my house? I'm 5 foot tall. I stood up. I walked over to my dad and I said, my mama had a problem and I had to solve it, sir.
Wow.
There was silence. And all of a sudden my dad smiled. and I knew it was okay. And I know that salute had to be a God thing because that was the connection.
Right.
And I think that was the point that my dad realized, Sissy's really going to take care of things. Sissy's what my brother, everybody called me, but was going to take care of things. Because my dad wanted my brother to do it, who lived 3,000 miles away in Alaska.
Yeah, you talk a lot about love. I know you've already mentioned a little bit about love, and I remember when my grandmother was bedridden and in her 90s. I think love was going to see her because she couldn't hear a word that I said. I mean, I would have to.
Have you met my father yet? You can't hear half of what I said.
I would scream at the top of my lungs because she was too vain to wear hearing aids, and so he couldn't talk her into them, and so that was love. But she would, when she realized who I was, because she sometimes didn't realize who you were, but when she did, she would just say, Lisa, I love you. And that just made it all worthwhile, even though I'm going to cry. But even though it was hard. So that was one way I loved my grandmother, by going to see her, even though it was just, I didn't have any voice when I left. So can you talk about some ways that you talk about in your book, how we practically love our family members who are going down with dementia?
Oh, that's a great question. We should love everyone. We love one another, and we should love like a child, love unconditionally. And I've mentioned that my dad was kind of hard to love, and if you've read my book, you understand some of the reasons why. But there were times, even towards the end, when my mom, and be prepared for this because it will happen. I remember a time when I was coming to my mom and she yelled at me, "Get out of here, I hate you, I don't ever want to see you again." And those words come to the core because that's your mother. That's the person who cared for you, who cradled you, who fed you. And I know I cried all day long, but I remember telling myself, that's not my mom, that's the disease. That's not my mom, that's the disease. And the other thing is I said, God, is this the new norm? I'm going, oh my gosh, how will I handle this? And my journey started some 20 years ago, and a lot has happened in the last 20 years. So I almost feel like I was a precursor to finding out some of these answers and all. But I had to love her through that. And God blessed me because 6 weeks before my mom passed, she didn't really recognize me for a month or two. I knew I was familiar, but she didn't say my name. And, I just knew she didn't know really that I was her daughter. But 6 weeks before, we always blow kisses from the door. And as I'm walking out the door, I hear this, "Charlotte, get back over here." And it was like I was a child again, and I'd done something wrong. But boy, you have no idea how fast I ran back to my mom at that moment, not knowing that 6 weeks later she would be gone. So that was a blessing. So everything is a blessing. True. And people have to remember that, each of those. And you have to learn to laugh at things like that. I can now, but I didn't at the time.
I have a quick, really funny story. I'm just real quick, but I remember when my father-in-law had, started the dementia, and my husband went up to him and said, "Guess what, Dad? Guess what today is?" And it was our anniversary, and he goes, "It's Lisa and mine's wedding anniversary," and he goes, "Too bad." And so I just had to tell that story now because we just had to laugh. I'm like, thanks. I had to laugh because I knew that, he wasn't right.
Yeah, laughter creates that endorphins in us, and it helps us all heal, no matter which side you're on, whether you're the caregiver or that person.
You're doing such a great job, and your stories are really hitting home with me personally. My parents are of the age where the journey is beginning. And so I'm going to jump just a little bit, but I know that Lisa will be able to catch me where I go. One of the things I wanted to talk about is forgiveness, and it's very, very important. I come from a family where there is abuse, and it was very hard to deal with in our family. And I have to thank God that my father was exceptionally repentant about the sexual abuse that occurred between he and I. And when he was in jail, he found Jesus and he found therapy and group therapy. And so he used his time there with 4 days a week in therapy, trying to figure out why he did what he did, etc. But you find out as your father is aging that your father hurt your daughter. Your father had to undergo some psychiatric help. And towards the end of his life, he was also repentant. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I actually, when my daughter was 13 is when I found out. And my dad didn't die till 83. So there was a period I didn't forgive him. I couldn't find that forgiveness in my heart. And then God had me be his caregiver. That was a little hard, a little different, but I did it for my mom, I think, from the underlying way. I loved him, I just didn't like him. There's a fine line there. I loved him, he loved me, you know, and he learned to love me more and be able to show it. I mentioned this in my book, but my dad ended up in a senior facility the last 18 months of his life. And during that 18 months, he told me he loved me more than he had my whole life before that. Yeah. And I will treasure that. But shortly before he died, he asked to see, because he molested my daughter. And he asked to see my daughter. He apologized to both of us.
It's beautiful.
I cannot tell you, it was like, you know, a mountain coming off of my shoulders. You know, God blessed us with that. And, you know, we all hugged. It was big.
I know the beauty and joy that comes with forgiveness. Yeah. So that is just beautiful.
Do you know, patience is so very important. Could you tell me how you worked to have an extra patience with your family?
Patience is important, but it's not just having patience with them, it's having patience with yourself. Because I promise you, your mind's going to go, why me, Lord? You know,
Yes.
it's going to say, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? But you just have to, I think you do it more and more. You know, when they do something, you just say, that's not that person. That is the disease. You have patience with your children, and here's the bottom line. It's role reversal. They become your children. So if you treat them with the same love that you would your children and the same patience that you have with your children, I promise it'll be a lot easier. You know, make it simple. Don't complicate things because they're trying to sort it out. And never tell them they're wrong. I know that sounds funny, but you can never argue with them. Never tell them they're wrong. All you're going to do
Is agitate them.
is agitate
them.
it
That's
and
right.
make it worse and make it worse and make it worse.
You know, there's that other problem when your family members go downhill. We saw this with my husband's father, George, is that at some point they don't know who you are. And that is very difficult. So I wanted you to talk about that a little bit. But I remember taking him, we were going to take George to a doctor's appointment up, he was in Iowa. And so we took him, we were holding on to him and took him out to the car, and he went limp on us because he thought we were strangers, you know, trying to take him away. And my husband goes, this isn't worth it. And he didn't last much longer. He died shortly after that. So what do you do, first of all, how can you help people when your parents quit knowing who you are? And also, you have some ways to slow down dementia. So can you talk about all those in this question?
Well, golly, slowing it down. One of the things I've just learned, because I'm still in the industry, I speak at senior centers, I speak at nursing homes, I speak to caregivers, I speak, you know, to the nurses, because I've walked the walk. One of the things that I do recommend for people to do is learn as much as you can. And it's happening younger and younger. It's called brain overload is what is happening and causing the Alzheimer's and the dementia and other things. You know, we women, we all multitask. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't be multitasking because we're overtaxing your brain. Think about doing jumping jacks all day long. When your brain is doing 5 different things, it's doing jumping jacks. A quick example, my 44-year-old daughter had a stroke last year in September during COVID. We couldn't go see her. And it's now almost, it be a year in September, but she's paralyzed kind of on one side. It's happening more and more to younger. There are more and more 50 to 60-year-olds with dementia and Alzheimer's going into senior centers. So what I'm saying is, slow your life down. Take time and take a vacation, take a break. If you're the caregiver and you decide to bring your parent home with you, that's your choice. But I'm going to forewarn you. My husband, I had my father-in-law with us, and I loved him to death. But my husband said, we'll bring your mom into the house. And I said, and you will bury me. I love my mom. Because here's a statistic. 57% of caregivers die before the person they're caring for.
Wow.
Yes.
And it's scary. And it's just going to be growing. This industry is by leaps and bounds, not just us that are seniors right now. Did you know that 10-year-olds today, 50% of them will live to be 110? So, I mean, the senior, it's not going to go away.
Right.
The generations are going to keep, it's going to, keep it there.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Charlotte, for joining us here on Pop Talk. Charlotte is an author of 8 books. Her latest one called Sparks, Igniting Your Way to Success. But what we were talking about was you have to laugh to keep from crying, how to parent your parents. And it comes with the book and a workbook. So you can reach Charlotte at her website, which is howtoparentyourparents.com, or just email her directly at charlotte@charlottecanon.com. So again, that's Charlotte at charlottecanon, that's CANION.com.
And one quick little correction, it's howtoparentyourparents.net. I know it's easy to put to say .com.
Did I fail my test again?
Sorry. It's just, I know.
Tree house.
Okay, well, I want to get her checked out. No, I'm just kidding.
That's okay.
And we really have enjoyed talking to you, and I know that you've helped a lot of people with this situation of having aging parents. We would also love for you to check in with us. If you need some prayer, maybe you need prayer for your family situation, especially in light of this subject matter today. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. Our website is pearlsofpromiseministries.com. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and we're on Instagram at Pop Ministries. So check in with us.
And we're very happy to say how grateful we are for our television network, Faith Unveiled, Paula White's Live Network for Women, King Television, Overcomers TV, and CTF TV.
And as always, thanks to Grace Point Media for doing the production work on today's show. Brand new studios. For all your production needs, go to gracepoint.media. And so that is Pop Talk for today. We're just ordinary girls.
Who God is turning into pearls.
We hope you have a wonderful week.